All right. Happy Black History Month, everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Kai, and I am the founder and CEO of KaiXR, the most inclusive and accessible 360 platform where kids can explore, dream, and create. My team and I are thrilled to have you as we explore futuristic Black history. If this is your first time rocking out with KaiXR, let me take 60 seconds to tell you more about what we do. KaiXR is the most inclusive and accessible 360 platform where kids can explore our 100 plus teacher approved virtual field trips. We work hard to ensure our diverse KaiXR field trips are available on all devices for students, including laptops, tablets, and smartphones. And if you are a lover of VR, we got you covered. Our KaiXR field trips also work on all VR headsets where you can be fully immersed in the action. In addition, KaiXR teaches kids how to dream and create in VR with our mixed reality courses taught by our certified teachers. We also host professional development for educators. We like to say that we are a first touch point for kids interested in futuristic tech such as AR, VR, and 360 content. To all of our customers, old and new, we are so thankful for you. Thanks for continuing to support Black business. We have an amazing program for you this evening, so don't forget to grab your notebook to write down all the cool things you will learn. So I never assume anyone knows what I'm talking about when I say AR and VR. So to get things started, let's kick off with a warm-up. Coming to the stage is KaiXR's warm-up extraordinaire and my first-year mentor teacher, Miss Yolanda Farmer.
Hey, dreamers, hey! Happy Black History Month. We are so happy that you are here with us today. Well, what Kai didn't tell you is not only was I her mentor teacher, I am nosy neighbor number one. So let's get started. I want to know, what is virtual reality and have you ever used it before? So please drop some answers for us in the chat. And also think about this. Have you ever tried a VR experience that you thought was really cool? If so, tell us about it. Maybe you haven't used VR at all, but you want to. Share that with us also. Can't wait to see what you're dropping in the chat. Drop some responses for us in the chat. Talk to me. Inquiring minds want to know. Oh yes, VR simulation that helps you explore alternative spaces. Yes, yes, Hunty, yes. A portal to the metaverse. Ooh, I'm loving that. The void is awesome. I agree 100%. 100%. Yes. Oh my goodness. So your daughter is into it. That, young people, they are always at the top of the game when it comes to technology. I love it. Oh, isn't it cool when you try it for the first time at the state fair? That sounds really awesome. I love learning new things. So excited. Oh my gosh, dreamers, you are crushing the game here. Oh my goodness, you love VR. I do too. It's a new game, but it is amazing. Oh my gosh, dreamers, thank you for sharing. Keep sharing those ideas with us in the chat. But we're going to keep things moving. So I'm going to turn you right back over to the one and only Kai so we can learn more about VR.
Thank you so much, Ms. Farmer. You all had some amazing answers. So in its simplest form, VR is when you use a device, such as a VR headset, to become fully immersed in a virtual environment. At KaiXR, we specialize in virtual reality. As soon as that headset goes on, doors are open and you are transported to new worlds. While wearing your headset, you might experience new sounds, new locations, and even new cultures. And most times it feels like you're really in that new world, even if you may just be sitting on your couch. Recently, our team traveled to Kansas City, Missouri to film our newest KaiXR field trip celebrating the Negro National Leagues. Our field trip lets you learn more about the players and tour the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. This production could not have been possible without our first two guests, and we are so thankful to have them join us today. So, coming to the stage, please give your best virtual round of applause for our first panelists, Mr. Bob Kendrick and Jonathan Williams. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Kendrick and Jonathan. For the students watching, I'm going to have you all introduce yourself. Mr. Kendrick, if you're still there with us, can you go ahead and go first?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Kendrick, and I have the honor of being the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri.
Thank you so much. And Jonathan, I'm coming over to you next.
Yep, my name is Jonathan Williams. I'm an XR creator, and I've been in the industry for about 4 years now.
Awesome, awesome. So let's jump directly into the history. Mr. Kendrick, what are the Negro National Leagues?
The Negro National League was the first successful organized Black baseball league established almost 101 years ago. As a matter of fact, this coming Saturday will mark the 101st anniversary of the birth of the Negro Leagues, formed here in Kansas City. As a matter of fact, kids, just around the corner from where my office is at the Paseo YMCA, it gave an opportunity for Black and Hispanic baseball players to play professional baseball at its highest level, since they weren't allowed to play in the major leagues simply because of the color of their skin. So they created their own league.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. And going into our next question, the players of the Negro Leagues broke barriers. Can you talk a bit about their accomplishments, and how does your museum document these trailblazers?
We do. We tell the story of these amazing and very courageous athletes who really triumphed over adversity. They loved the game of baseball so much that they were willing to endure whatever social adversity confronted them to play the game that they loved. And so there were oftentimes kids where these players could go into a town, they could fill up the ballpark, and yet not be able to get a meal from the same fans who had just cheered them, or not have a place to stay. So unfortunately, they would have to sleep on the bus and eat their peanut butter and crackers until they could get to a place that would offer them basic services, but they never allowed that to kill their love of the game. The Negro League Baseball Museum brings their story to light. The story is not in the pages of American history books, so it's exciting for us to have this kind of technology opportunity to introduce this to students around the world, and we're super excited about that.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. So for this next question, I'm going to show a quick clip to give background. So give me 1 second where I hit play.
Major League Baseball finally reclassifying the Negro Leagues as a major league. The MLB made the announcement today. They are correcting a long-time oversight, as they put it, in the game's history. That means the stats and records from the likes of Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, and thousands of others will become official.
So this is a current event from the end of last year. So recently, the Negro Leagues made headlines when Major League Baseball finally decided to recognize the 3,400 players of the Negro Leagues. Mr. Kendrick, what does this mean for history?
It means a great deal, because what it does, Kai, is it actually rewrites the pages of American history books. And as a museum, that was our goal from the onset, that maybe one day we could rewrite the pages of American history books to include the story of the Negro Leagues, which had unfortunately been ignored by historians. And so Major League Baseball, by making this acknowledgement of the Negro Leagues and its recognition of the Negro Leagues, and then integrating it into its historical statistics, has essentially rewritten the pages of American history books. Now, of course, they did it by rewriting their own history, but the history of baseball closely aligns with the history of this country. And so what I mean by that is, if you know the history of baseball, you essentially know the history of this country, and the Negro Leagues are an important part of the history of America.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. All right, Jonathan, I am coming over to you to learn more about your road to VR. So to get started, where did you go to school and what were some, or where did you grow up and what were some of your interests in school?
Yeah, so I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, up north, real close to Canada, very cold. And as a kid, I really liked drawing. I liked basic level animating, like drawing and doing a little flip book where your images are moving. I did a lot of music and I like to play with toys, honestly.
That sounds cool, Jonathan. So going to my next question, going from you growing up, now going to college, where did you go to college and what did you get your degree in?
So I went to college at Mankato State University, also in Minnesota. Um, from there, I went to Rouen Business School out in France, and I got my degree in international business and business management. And even though I went to those schools, I still to this day say that the best school I ever went to was YouTube University.
That's, that is the best university that we find. I didn't know you went to school internationally, Jonathan. Why didn't I know that?
You never asked.
I am learning new things as well. So going to my next question to give some more background, I'm going to share a clip of Jonathan's company, VRX Connect, and a bit of the work that he does. All right, Jonathan. So when did you first hear about VR and how did you break into the field?
Okay, so I first learned about VR from a video I saw on YouTube, and it was Snoop Dogg and YouTube in a laboratory making videos. And everybody knows the laboratory is not where you make videos. So I got curious. I went in and I kind of started researching what it was they were talking about with these 360 videos. And a deep dive showed me that it was like a new emerging media platform where you could make videos and see all the way around you. That was something I had never heard of before, and I knew immediately that this is the future. From there, I started to create my own. Like we took a DSLR camera and we shot it in like 4 directions, and we were doing it the most DIY way possible. I kept doing research, kept reaching out. I eventually found a company who was willing to hire me on as an intern because they saw that, I had at least been trying and creating content. And from there, the rest is history. They taught me all the skills that I needed. They put me in contact with some great people. I found some more mentors through them. And yeah, I've just been hacking away ever since, creating content and meeting as many people as I can.
That sounds cool, Jonathan. So I'm going to go to the next question. How have you used VR to share Black history and why is it important to do so? I'm going to start with this clip right here, if you could talk more about it.
Oh, it's just a clip, looping?
Yep.
Okay. So most recently, we traveled around the United States to capture marches, historical sites, and interviews from people who are really like paramount in all the recent protests happening around the country. It's called In Protest. It was a VR documentary series and it was a blast to shoot. This kind of stuff is fun because we're capturing history. Like this is history that's happening right now in our lifetime. And it was great to go out there and capture what was happening in the environment so that people can relive this. Even if you didn't make it to the march on Washington or anything like that, we have a VR experience for you. You can live that. You can see that 10 years from now, kids can hop in there and be at the march. And I just think that's paramount.
All right, Jonathan, I'm going to go to this next one that should look pretty familiar. Can you talk about this filming?
Yep, just as much fun. And that was us filming the Negro League Baseball Museum. That was end of last year. And that was actually kind of special to me because I felt like it highlighted some Black history I literally had no idea about. Mainly being that women played in the Negro Leagues. And that was something so next level to me. I mean, it showed how forward thinking Black people have been since the very beginning. And that's the kind of stuff that gets swept under the rug. And, you know, history doesn't do very, I don't know, they don't do very much for us. But going to places like this and experiencing these kind of things, man, is very important. I think that everyone needs to go through that museum. And now you can.
And now you can of our thanks for plugging that. So yeah, one of the big things that I thought was interesting is just what Jonathan said, that women were team players and team owners. And our VR experience highlights some of those people. So going to our next question, Mr. Kendrick, I wanted the Zoominar to be shaped around dreaming big for our ancestors. Mr. Kendrick, what would the players of the Negro Leagues want students to remember from their example?
They want you to dare to dream. And that's the message that I share. Number one, find something that you are passionate about and then follow your passion. But the story of the Negro Leagues, and I tell my guests all the time, if you walk away from the museum experience with nothing other than this, what the Negro Leagues teaches us is very simple. In this country, if you dare to dream and you believe in yourself, you can do or be anything you want to be. You see, these courageous athletes dared to dream of playing baseball. Honestly, kids, they had no idea that they were making history, and really they didn't care about making history. They just wanted to play ball. But the pride, the passion, the determination, the courage that they demonstrated in the face of adversity would not only change the game of baseball, but more importantly, it made life better in this country. And I think that would be the message that they would want to relate back to you all. Don't be afraid to dream and then go after those dreams.
Woo, that was a whole word, Mr. Kendrick. So dreamers, I hope you heard that. Do not be afraid to dream. And Jonathan, to close us out, how can students use futuristic tech like VR to share the lessons of our ancestors?
Well, the first thing you can do is just get in the industry, get your hands wet, create anything. Like, I don't care what you're making, make something. You know, anything you have in your mind in VR, you can create it. And just kind of get a little bit narrower on that. I would say things you can do is like share our history. You know, create experiences around our history, Black history. And we've seen the Greek and the Roman, the medieval, we've seen all that stuff, you know, and you can reimagine that and insert Black people. I'm with that too. Or we can tell some Egyptian stories, some Nubian, Ethiopian, like there's so many other things out there that we can create these VR worlds like based on. And yeah, I'd like to see more of that Afrofuturism, you know, that's getting real popular right now. So yeah, we got to tell our story, because if they tell it, we might not even be in the story.
It's funny because it's true. So I always say that for me and my team, when we're creating VR, it's never lost on me that if we don't create these stories, most times they don't get created. And I can't stress enough, a lot of these stories, when we're creating these VR experiences, they start off with like me sketching it out on pencil and paper, just having a notepad, and that's where it all starts. So it may not feel like you're doing much, but once you start putting your dreams to paper, you're really making a plan, and we are looking forward to seeing what you all create.
If I could add a little bit, we're here as resources. Like, feel free to hit us up. Like, we can help. If ever you're like, oh, how do I get past this blocker? I'm having this problem. Like, we are here as resources. Like, please feel free.
Yes. And at the very end of today, I'm going to drop everybody's information. So we can't stress that enough. When we are in these fields, we know how important it is to pay it forward and help everybody else that's coming up behind us. So if you need help, do not hesitate to ask. We always say this. I may say, if you need help, ask to 100 people and only 5 come up for help. So please, if you need help, let us know. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end this wonderful segment. So Jonathan and Mr. Kendrick, thank you so much for teaching us about the Negro Leagues and VR. Jonathan and Mr. Kendrick will be joining us at the end of our program to answer your questions. So make sure you're using the Q&A feature to submit your questions. And when we close our program, we're going to be sending everybody on a virtual field trip to explore the Negro League Baseball Museum on kayxr.com. And as the world becomes more and more virtual, make sure you keep an eye out for examples of VR in your world. And like we just said, if you're not sure where to start, we have you covered. You can send an email to us at info@kayxr.com if you have any questions about VR. All right, as we prepare for our last segment, we're going to turn our attention to augmented reality. Coming back to the Zoominar stage, please welcome Ms. Farmer for our last warm-up.
Hey, dreamers, hey. I'm back. I hope that you learned so much during that last segment about virtual reality. And I hope that you were inspired, because I know I was for sure. And again, back in nosy neighbor mode, I want to know, what is augmented reality and have you ever used AR before? Make sure to write your answers in the chat, your responses, because we want to know. Inquiring minds are dying to know. And also think about these things. Have you ever tried a cool AR app? If so, we want to know. Tell us about it. Well, maybe you haven't used AR before, but you want to. Share that with us as well. Oh, Pokemon Go. Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. AR enhancements. Look at, no, not yet, but I'm sure you will. Some of you, oh my, wow, these responses are like flying in here. This is so awesome. You would love some suggestions on where to get started. Well, don't you worry, we've got you covered. Snapchat, yes, yes, for Snapchat. Snaps up on Snapchat. Not yet, but we'll soon. I love that spirit. You go now. That's what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness. Yes, you've used it before with art. Right. That, isn't that awesome? Art is like a great medium to explore AR. Don't know anything? Haven't tried it yet? I'm sure you will. It's just a matter of time. And we're glad you're enjoying the program. So dreamers, you've done a great job, and please keep responding to us in that chat. We'd love to hear what you've done and what you've experienced. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it right back over to Kai so we can learn some things about AR.
Thank you so much, Ms. Farmer. Great answers, dreamers. So let's dive right in. What is AR? Simply put, AR is when you use a device like a smartphone to augment or change what you're seeing. One example of AR would be a Snapchat filter, which some of you all said in the chat. Of course, you don't have a rainbow coming out your mouth, but when you look at it through your smartphone, what you're seeing has been changed or augmented. And maybe now you do have a rainbow coming out your mouth. Another popular example would be Pokemon Go. Is Pikachu really standing behind you, or is your smartphone augmenting your reality? To learn more about AR, our next segment will spotlight some cool ways AR is being used in Oakland, California. I moved to Oakland about 2 years ago, and when people ask me how the move is going, I always say I could write a love letter to Oakland. I adore it. So it's a huge honor to have our next two guests, Miss Fredrika Newton and Damien McDuffie, joining us to talk more about Oakland's history. So we'll go ahead and give them a nice virtual round of applause. So to get started, I'm going to have you all introduce yourself, and I want to know, you can give me your name, your title, and then tell me how long you've been in Oakland. Miss Newton, I'll have you go first.
Hi, thank you, Kai. My name is Fredrika Newton, and I'm here. I've been in Oakland for 69 years, which is a long time. I was born in Kaiser Hospital and retired from my job at Kaiser Hospital a year and a half ago, so I didn't go very far, but I too have a love affair with Oakland. Thank you.
A love affair is a good way to put it. Damien, I'm coming over to you. Tell me about your time in Oakland, your name, your title, anything you want to tell me.
So I've been in Oakland my whole life as well, for about 34, 35 years. I can't remember how old I am. I grew up in West Oakland. It's the historic Black neighborhood of Oakland. And I've always just been interested in understanding like why my family is here. So really trying to eternally ask that question is really what kind of got me to AR, is really digging through family photos, asking questions of my grandmother, recording them, doing oral histories, and that was what kind of got me on the impetus of mixing, you know, the digital and the physical worlds. So that's why.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So keep that same energy, Damien. I'm coming right back to you. So Miss Newton, I'm going to go ahead and start off with you. So let's jump into some uniquely Oakland history. Miss Newton, to kick things off, can you give us a brief overview of the Black Panther Party?
Absolutely. The Black Panther Party was founded in 1966 by two college students, Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, who both grew up here in Oakland, in North Oakland. And it was in response to the rampant police brutality in Oakland. And armed with law books, the Panthers patrolled the police in order to protect their community. It's true that they carried weapons, but only within their legal rights and only for the purpose of self-defense. And the reason why they were so powerful was not only because they confronted the police, but because they addressed the basic needs of their community that the government had failed to do. So they pioneered free social services program, which we called the survival programs. As a matter of fact, the Black Panther Party created 68 survival programs that include the free breakfast program, which are still in schools currently, the free ambulance program, the free health clinics. And they started these programs and they were absolutely free to the community. And they did this because they loved the community so much. So the Black Panther Party members were often very young. For the most part, I think the average age was 19. And I remember I was a Black Panther Party member myself. And one of the youngest members, I remember her name was Marcia, and she was 14 years old. So we were very, very young and very committed. And so these were just a few of the programs that we created to protect and serve the Black community. What we used to say is that they were service for people program, and we serve the people, body and soul.
That is absolutely beautiful. I've never felt such a strong sense of community until I moved to Oakland. So all of this just resonates so much. So Ms. Newton, I want to know, how did it feel being a Panther, and tell us some of the biggest lessons you learned?
It was when I was a Panther, I just turned 19 years old, and I found that it was one of the most, was empowering. I felt that I was really, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss of words. I get a little emotional when I start talking about the Black Panther Party. I loved the party, and it was one of the most purposeful times in my life. We worked very, very hard. It meant that we had to make a lot of sacrifices. We lived communally. We didn't get paid. It, as I said, came from a deep sense of love for the community. So what we did was, like I said, it was all volunteer, and we just did it out of love. So for me, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of commitment. And it was a very powerful and purposeful time in my life. It was also very stressful because the police had killed many members of our organization. The government waged a war against the Black Panther Party. They said that we were the single biggest threat to the internal security of the United States for feeding hungry children and taking care of seniors. So we were always attacked and on attack, and we just never knew when that might happen. So it was very intense time as well.
Just following up on that, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned during that time?
I think that I learned, I remember one comrade, we used to call each other comrades. And this comrade said, "Comrade sister, I would die for you." And it just let me know the level of commitment that one person could have when you're willing to lay down your life, when you're willing to lay down your life for something that you believe in. And so I think everything kind of paled in comparison to that, that if you're willing to put your life on the line for something that you believe in, then, it was just so memorable for me that these were young men and women that were willing to do that. And not only that, we made something out of nothing. So I learned that if you have a dream, if there's something that you see that's lacking in your community, that you don't have to wait for somebody else to do that, that these are things that you can do yourselves, that we were young people and with a lot of commitment and a lot of courage. People were very courageous in that organization, and that we didn't need, we didn't need permission to do what we did. If we saw something that was going wrong in our community, then we set out to make sure that it was taken care of.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. I'll say from living in Oakland, one of the things that is so powerful to me is how many elders in the community still who remind us to know our power and to really make a way out of no way and encourage us to just put something to paper and get it done. And that spirit has been really helpful to me when starting my company. So I'm super thankful for the spirit of the Panthers. So I'm going to ask you this next question. Last summer put a spotlight on racial justice. How did groups like the Black Panthers pave the way for new generations of activism?
I think that the party laid the groundwork for the importance of working together. The Black Panther Party worked together with members of many organizations that were oppressed. So we laid the groundwork with clear demands and social service programs that we created and organized for change. So I think that not unlike what you're seeing today, that the Black Panther Party was kind of at the vanguard of working in coalition, which means working with other organizations that had a similar mission. So that inspired organizations like the Brown Berets, the Gray Panthers, which were seniors that were working for senior rights. The Panthers were, there were Panther offices all over the world. So with international Black Panther Party offices in Samoa, in the United Kingdom, in Appalachia. There were poor white people in Appalachia who worked with the Black Panther Party. So it was the first organization that worked in coalition with members of organizations that were working against oppression, period.
Period. Thank you, Ms. Newton. So I'm going to go ahead and come over to you, Damien. So tell me about growing up in Oakland and what were some of your interests in school?
I'm glad to be here again and to work with Mrs. Newton on some of the projects that she's working on. My interest in school, when I was younger, the first thing I really wanted to be was a lawyer and a doctor for kids. And I wanted to do both of those at the same time. But as I kind of grew up a little bit more, I decided to go to school and become a writer. So through my journalism kind of lens, I was able to go to school, learn about writing. I wrote about, professional wrestling. I wrote about Black history. I could write about anything that I wanted to. So I love the creativity that allowed. And as soon as I, saw something along with XR or VR, had conversations with people like Kai, it kind of exploded from there.
All right, cool. So now I'm going to ask a little bit about your college university life. So where did you go to college and what did you get your degree in? You can tell me about first job, stuff like that, but how was it your road to college and afterwards?
Well, one of the things I was fortunate, like in my family, I was always like encouraged to go to college, even though we never had anyone in the whole family, ever actually make it and go through. So that it was kind of not really a choice for me. And I ended up going to a smaller school in Los Angeles called Loyola Marymount. That's where I studied political science, African-American studies, to really learn about my history. And then I was able to go to Columbia University in New York and, hone my skills as a writer and as a storyteller so that I can bring it back really and tell stories about Oakland in particular. So it always kind of comes back to family or the soil of West Oakland, really, for me.
Yeah, and just looking at some of the questions coming in the chats, people are asking about you have to be a good designer or this background. I want to state that for a lot of us, our background is writing. A lot of these stories have to be written down first before it even gets to the text. So there are a lot of skills that people don't think about are really important to this field, and we need all the skills to keep this going. So Damien, I'm going to ask you this next question. How did you first hear about augmented reality and how did you break into the field?
Well, so I mean, the first thing I want to say is that like the openness and the newness of augmented reality means that there are not rules to kind of be constrained by. Like you make whatever you want to exist. Kai used to really kind of get on my nerves and tell me that you're limited only by your imagination, but it's really true. So, you know, for me, I first heard about augmented reality when I ran into a friend of mine where we really only talk about wrestling with each other. But at this moment, he was doing augmented reality displays. I also was in conversation with Fredrika because as we were thinking about ways to create an interactive you know, XR museum or, you know, anything like that, I was able to kind of go all around the world to places like Japan and go to Thailand and see where they've already been doing some of this stuff for so long and actually come back and get inspired and see how do I want to use it for, you know, Black art and Black archives and making sure things are accessible.
All right, that sounds good to me.
And I want to say one thing that really, maybe about a year and 2 months ago, I was still asking Kai about questions around what is AR and what is VR and like, how does this work and all of those things. So what I love is I haven't been in a place since I was a kid where everything that I'm learning is so new and I can create from there. I can make it what it is. So it's really exhilarating to take the things that I see in archives like Ms. Newton has and be able to, you know, relate them to other people in a safe way, because they shouldn't just be in the closet, they should be among us.
Yeah, that, you know, one of the advantages, you'll see a lot of us don't have a typical traditional background for AR and VR. And what goes in our advantage is there are really no rules right now. So we can all jump in, we all make community, we all work together to make sure we're bringing these stories to the forefront. And I like that Damien is talking about he's only been doing this for a little over a year. And when we first started talking about it, he kept saying, well, can I make this? Can I make that? Well, how about this? And I used to always say, whatever you can dream, Damien. And I did get on his nerves a lot about that, but that's the truth. Whatever, that's what we talk so much about, dreaming. Whatever you can dream up, we can create. But a lot of us don't know how to dream. So it takes a lot of situations like this and encouragement to know that you can literally make whatever you can imagine. So Damien, I'm going to talk more about how are you using AR to share Oakland's history. So I have this first image up. Can you talk about this and what was your motivation behind this?
So one of the things I kind of love is like finding a platform where you can, any interest that you have or ability that you have or want to create, you can kind of bring them all together in this. So I talked about how I was a writer and I was a journalist and I was very interested in history and kind of interviewing people. So what you see there is a video that I ended up doing in augmented reality that it lays a video of Mrs. Newton really speaking about her history in the Black Panther Party and some of the oral histories that we've kind of recorded together. So it started off as an audio. We added some images, pulled those together. And then we also had some video that you can see online, but the icing on the cake is being able to see it in real life. So now we take an image that's of her husband, of a person that's been in leadership, and then be able to make that image come alive because it's not just a stagnant image anymore. It's something that really tells the story of who this person is in a different way. So I was just like very, very excited to join those things together. I think the other thing is
I got your next one coming up. What about this one?
Exactly right there. So there's so much history to be told. And the best way for Black people to be able to do that is to tell individual stories about how we knew and received certain people. So I see something like this. This is some work that Mrs. Newton has been working on to create a artistic bust in West Oakland that is dedicated to Dr. Huey P. Newton. How does that, really relate to augmented reality? One of the things I've had the opportunity to do is to scan the actual kind of like statue and bust of what we're creating, and then be able to display it in different places all around the world. I came from Mexico yesterday, where I was recording and digitizing like 3D mural landscapes. And I also happen to have like the AR experience of placing Huey's bust in different places. So there was Huey on the beach, and there's Huey, in Sayulita and things like that. So you can really kind of figure out, there's so much that can come of it. I don't even have the answers on where the ends are, but it's more about just creating and then seeing how all of my mindsets come together.
All right. Well, as we close out, Ms. Newton, I'm coming back to you. So you and your organization, the Huey P. Newton Foundation, has done some phenomenal work for the community. In the spirit of dreaming big for our ancestors, what would your late husband, Huey Newton, want students to remember about his legacy and the spirit of the Panthers?
I think that Huey would want us to remember that that we too are only limited by our imagination, that laying the groundwork and working together and clearing, what is it I was going to say, with the clear demands, to know that you too can do what we did, that you're only limited by your own imagination, that what we did really changed the world and changed the landscape of the world. And that was not something that you cannot do today. So it's like having the courage of your convictions, that when you see something that's going on in your neighborhood that you feel powerless over, you're not. You have the power, and the power is you. Huey used to say that the power of the people is greater than the technology, and that you too have this power. So we used to say all power to the people, and that means that all power is in the people. And as young people, you definitely have the power.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and have Damien close us out, because that was beautiful. Damien, why should students use futuristic tech like AR to keep the spirit of our ancestors alive?
Well, I think it's something that, Ms. Newton just hit on. One of the things that Dr. Newton, Huey would talk about is the technology question and the importance of the control of technology to solving social issues, and then to also be able to tell your own individual stories. So in a time where we can literally print 3D homes, if that technology is controlled and moved by people who are homeless, then we wouldn't have homeless people. So it's kind of like being able to have access to the tech is really what's important. And that's why I built Black Terminus AR, because I think that, a place in the augmented reality space, the XR space, where we can revere our own history and our archives, and create new videos and new objects from that, is really going to be the way that we are free. I think that Black people in particular, we are the greatest storytellers in the history of the world, and we can create anything that we need to, and it's important that the platforms that we're creating on are platforms that we own.
Okay, I'll try my best to keep moderating, but y'all are just dropping just gem after gem after gem. So I just can't keep saying it matters who makes the technology. And we need everybody, all the students, all the kids, to know you can make the technology. Even if you have no tech background. I have absolutely zero tech background. Damien saying he has no tech background either. And look, we're here making the tech. And then, like I said, we're like they're saying, we are powerful. So there's so much power in who makes this tech. And just remember, tech is only a tool. So I'm going to try my best to wind this session down, since you are just making all of our ancestors proud, everybody on this panel today. So I'm going to say thank you so much to Ms. Newton and Damien. I'm going to have you all stay on the screen as we roll into questions from our panelists. So to you all who are watching, just as a heads up, remember that tech is rapidly evolving. So keep an eye out when you see augmented reality examples. If you're in Oakland, Damien, where is this at? This is in next to City Hall on 14th?
Yeah, that's on 14th and Broadway right there. Actually.
Yeah. So there's so many AR prompts that are popping up all over. So keep an eye out for AR in your world. So I'm going to do my best to get through some of these questions. So I'm going to roll us into Q&A. So thank you everybody for submitting your questions during the program. I'm going to have all of our panelists come join us for Q&A. So I'm going to have Mr. Kendrick and Jonathan come back to the screen so we can answer questions. There we go. Hey, Mr. Kendrick, Jonathan. There we go. There's all my friends. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with these questions. So, Mr. Kendrick, one question I have that's going to be geared towards you. It says, Mr. Kendrick, you spoke about the courage of the players in the Negro Leagues. How would you advise young people to have courage in times of adversity?
And that's a wonderful question.
Isn't
I,
it?
I think it comes, guys, from what I talked about earlier, that self-belief. You have to really believe in yourself and believe in what it is that you want to do. And for those athletes, they were driven by passion. They were driven by love of the game. And even when my major league athletes come by to visit the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, that's the thing that we talk about more so than anything else. That's the one thing that you all share in common with the players from the Negro Leagues. It's about love of whatever it is that you want to do. And if you believe in that enough, the courage kind of follows to go with what you're convicted for. You believe in something, you go after it. And that's just how they felt about the game of baseball. And they knew how good they were. They knew that they were playing some of the best baseball that could be played. They wanted everybody else to know how good they were. But I do think that courage comes from their passion and just simple love of what they were doing.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. So, Jonathan, this next question is for you. Where do you gain inspiration to create content that speaks to Black communities?
I gain inspiration just from life. Sorry, that's really vague, but a good example is we're working on a project called Black Scan right now, which is like capturing Black history. We're going to like AR capture different assets. Well, first example we did was the Jackie Robinson Memorial in Pasadena. It was like a big Jackie Robinson head. So we were able to scan something like that. And I only wanted to do that project because I saw that a lot of Black people didn't know too much about their history. And I felt like Black Scan would be a good way for us to kind of fill in some of those gaps. So I just look for where there's a need, I guess, and create from that.
Yeah, and I have to stress too, there's so many gaps. So when we don't, it's going to take all of us to document that history to fill in those gaps, no matter how we do it. It can be even a small project, but just know for a lot of these projects, they weren't there before we documented them in some of this new tech. So we need everybody documenting whatever they can to bring this tech alive for future generations. So anyway, Ms. Newton, I'm going to come over to you next. No, I'm lying. I'm gonna go to Damien. Damien, I have a question here that says, can you speak more about the importance of keeping Black stories alive? You talked a little bit about it, but they want to hear more. Talk more about why it's so important to keep these Black stories alive.
Well, definitely. I think the stories, personal stories and stories in general are really how you know yourself and how you learn to build off of a history and create something new. The other part is, I think I always say Black people have always had to, we're always telling group stories. We have to tell the histories of movements. We have to tell the histories of like these great people, quote unquote, versus, you know, there are a lot of folks who had very important individual lives and stories that deserve kind of attention all their own. And if we're able to do that with our, you know, our grandparents and the people who really have the history, then we can, in the future, we can tell the stories better. Right now, we can tell stories based on a collection of movements, but it's different to tell the story of Dr. Huey P. Newton, who you see sitting in a wicker chair, versus a person that you've listened to from their families talk about and give insight about. So there are stories and there's histories that we have within ourselves that actually need to come out so that we can tell stories in the future. And
that sounds good to me. Ms. Newton, this last question is for you. The question is, how can we keep the Black Panther Party alive in our souls today through our work as a collective?
That's a really good question. Yeah, these questions are phenomenal. I think, and it kind of goes along with what the gentleman said from the Negro baseball. I'm sorry, I didn't get his name. He spoke so eloquently about just having the passion. If you have the passion and you have the dream, then then you're going to find people that are going to work alongside you to do exactly what it is that they have the passion for too. So I think just find what we didn't work alone. We worked in collaboration and coalition with other organizations, and knowing that there's strength in numbers. So don't try and work in isolation. Find like minds, find people who are willing to sacrifice in the same way that you are, and you'll be able to do this work. There was no magic or secret to it. It just came from hard work, sacrifice, dream big, and do what's in your heart. It really started with love. It really started with a deep love for the community and a willing to make a sacrifice. So that's, and we had no idea that we were making history. We had no idea that 50 years later, somebody would still be talking about the Panthers, that somebody would be making movies. As a matter of fact, please watch Judas and the Black Messiah. I think it previews on the 12th. It's a beautiful story of one of our leaders who was killed by the police, Chairman Fred Hampton. And then you can see what inspired him and what inspired others. And you can, not that we want you to make that supreme sacrifice, but there is so much that you can do in your community.
Amen. It all starts in love. So I'm going to, yeah, that's a great way to end it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for today. So great question, dreamers. Thank you so much. Let's join me in giving our panelists a huge virtual round of applause. We are so thankful to have everybody here with us today. As we close out, we're going to officially debut our newest KAIXR field trip to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. We're going to drop a link in the chat. And when you see that link, it's going to take you directly to the field trip. And you're going to see, you can watch the field trip to the Negro Leagues Museum for free. And you'll also see 15 other Black stories highlighted on our main page there. To unlock our 100+ field trips, you can create an account and start your free trial. And as a special gift, if you make an account, we're going to send everybody some cool KAIXR swag to you in the mail. So we're so looking forward to you watching the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and seeing some other amazing Black stories that we have highlighted on our page. So if you're new to watching our virtual field trips, we recommend that you start watching them on a laptop first. And don't forget that our KAIXR field trips are filmed in 360 degrees. So that means you have to drag and rotate your screen around to really explore the full 360 degrees of action. So thank you to all of our guests that tuned in today as we explored futuristic Black history. I'd like to give a huge shout out to our amazing panelists and my fabulous KAIXR team working hard behind the scenes to make sure everything ran smoothly. We hope you had as much fun as we did. And before you leave, take a moment to screenshot this page so you can stay connected to everybody's fantastic work. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for supporting Black business, and please keep an eye out for future events. Happy Black History Month, everybody, and we will see you soon.